behind every iconic First Lady lies a treasure trove of secrets, quirks, and stories stranger than fiction. From pet raccoons parading the White House grounds to fears that haunted America's most powerful women, these 101 ridiculous facts will shock, amuse, and amaze you. Prepare to journey beyond the polished portraits and polished speeches into the wild, whimsical, and sometimes downright bizarre lives of America's First Ladies. Ready to discover the unexpected? Let's dive into the stories they never told you. Because history is never as tidy as it seems. Grace Coolidge had a pet raccoon named Rebecca that she frequently took on walks around the White House grounds on a leash. Imagine the First Lady of the United States strolling the pristine White House lawns, not with a poodle or a golden retriever, but with a full-on raccoon named Rebecca. Grace Coolidge wasn't your typical pet owner. While most of us struggle to keep a squirrel out of the bird feeder, Grace decided to leash up a raccoon and parade it around the nation's most famous residence. Rebecca was no wild menace. She was a cherished member of the family, indulged and apparently well-behaved enough to accompany Grace on formal walks. One can only picture the stunned faces of the Secret Service agents and dignitaries alike. Is that a raccoon on a leash? Yep, the Coolidge White House was basically the original wildlife sanctuary meets high society. Of course, this raises questions about how one keeps a raccoon house-trained, or whether Rebecca had her own state dinners. Grace's quirky choice of pet was a perfect reflection of an era when presidential families weren't afraid to break a few social norms or pet ownership rules. And if you think that's strange, wait until you hear what Mary Todd Lincoln did with gloves. Mary Todd Lincoln once spent so much on gloves that Abraham Lincoln reportedly called it her glove extravagance. Gloves were the fashion statement of the 19th century, but Mary Todd Lincoln took glove obsession to an Olympic level. According to legend, Honest Abe himself groaned about his wife's glove extravagance. Imagine the First Lady's closet bursting with gloves of every size, color, and fabric. Leather, silk, lace. You name it, Mary had it. Back then, gloves weren't just a style choice. They were a symbol of status, decorum, and a way to protect the hands that signed bills or shook countless hands. But Mary's collection apparently reached such excessive proportions that even Lincoln, a man used to dealing with Civil War politics, thought it was a bit much. This raises an amusing mental image. Abe scanning glove catalogs with a furrowed brow, trying to balance national crises with his wife's shopping sprees. Gloves might seem trivial today, but for Mary, they were serious business. And speaking of serious hobbies, did you know Louisa Adams made her own silk? Yes, you heard that right. Louisa Adams kept silkworms at the White House and actually made her own silk. In a time when DIY culture was basically a survival skill, Louisa Adams took it to regal heights by raising silkworms right in the White House. While most First Ladies managed flower gardens or baked cookies, Louisa was busy producing actual silk. Yes, the luxurious, shiny fabric that screams royalty. And I'm way too fancy for this. Silkworms aren't your average pets. They demand patience, a diet of mulberry leaves, and a touch of insect whispering. Louisa's dedication to sericulture makes her the ultimate crafting queen of early America. One wonders if she ever thought about turning the White House into a tiny silk factory, or gifting gowns woven by her own worms. This unexpected blend of domesticity and grandeur is exactly why First Ladies can never be pinned down to a single stereotype. From raccoons on leashes to glove shopping sprees to silk farming, the White House has seen it all. And if you think that's quirky, wait until you hear about Eleanor Roosevelt flying with Amelia Earhart, shattering expectations in style. Eleanor Roosevelt once flew with Amelia Earhart, breaking social norms for a First Lady. Eleanor Roosevelt wasn't content to just wave from the sidelines or host fancy dinner parties. Nope, she took to the skies, literally. In a time when women were still struggling to convince society they belonged anywhere beyond the kitchen or the drawing room, Eleanor teamed up with none other than Amelia Earhart, the most famous female aviator of the day. Imagine the headlines. First Lady soaring alongside the Lady Lindy, flipping the bird to the era's gender norms. This wasn't a casual joyride either. Flying was dangerous back then, with planes that rattled like tin cans and no GPS, just guts and a compass. Eleanor's willingness to step into the cockpit and into the public eye as an adventurous woman helped redefine what a First Lady could be. She wasn't just a decorative figure. She was a trailblazer, pushing boundaries and inspiring millions. And all this while managing the nation's toughest times with grace and grit. If you think that's daring, Frances Folsom Cleveland's pet alligator will really surprise you. Frances Folsom Cleveland was the youngest First Lady, married at 21, and briefly had a pet alligator. At just 21 years old, Frances Folsom Cleveland set records not just for youth, but for unconventional pet choices. Yes, you read that right, an alligator. Now, while most people opt for puppies or kittens, Frances went full swamp chic with a reptilian companion. One can only imagine the scene. A young First Lady navigating formal White House events with a toothy amphibian lurking nearby. Thankfully, the alligator's reign was brief, sparing Secret Service agents from having to double as crocodile wranglers. But this choice perfectly captures the spirit of a First Lady who wasn't afraid to shake up tradition or bring a little wildness to the most staid residents in America. It's a pet story that trumps any fluffy dog or parrot, showing that sometimes history's quirks are the best tales. Speaking of quirky tastes, Mamie Eisenhower's obsession with a specific shade of pink might just be the most colorful fact you'll hear today. Mamie Eisenhower had a favorite shade of pink, Mamie Pink, and decorated much of the White House in it. Mamie Eisenhower didn't just love pink, she made it her signature. A hue so distinct and pervasive, it earned the nickname Mamie Pink. Forget subtle pastels. This was the color that defined an era of the White House. From walls to furniture to accessories, this rosy obsession spread like wildfire, turning America's most iconic home into a blush-toned palace. Mamie's choice wasn't just about aesthetics. It was a statement. A way to inject warmth and personality into a place often seen as cold or overly formal. Some critics might have rolled their eyes, but there's no denying that Mamie Pink became synonymous with her cheerful and approachable style. Whether you loved it or hated it, the shade stamped her legacy in a way no mere policy or speech ever could. And if you think Mamie's flair was all about color, wait till you hear about Abigail Adams' rather unusual habit with snuff. Abigail Adams was known for her love of snuff and would carry a box with her. Abigail Adams wasn't just busy writing letters that would become legendary. She had a peculiar little habit that might raise some eyebrows today. She loved snuff. Yes, that's the powdered tobacco that you pinch and sniff, a habit that seems bizarre now, but was all the rage in the 18th century. Abigail was rarely seen without her trusty snuff box, which was practically an extension of her hand. Snuff wasn't just a nicotine fix. It was a social statement, a little luxury, and maybe even a stress reliever during the turbulent Revolutionary years. One can imagine her elegantly lifting a pinch of snuff while discussing the fate of a budding nation, blending the refined with the rugged in true Adams style. It's funny to picture one of America's most respected founding figures indulging in something so quirky. But it fits her perfectly. Intelligent, sharp, and unafraid to embrace a little eccentricity. Speaking of unexpected talents, Betty Ford was not just a First Lady. She was also a seriously accomplished dancer. Betty Ford was an accomplished dancer and even studied with Martha Graham. When you think of Betty Ford, you probably picture the outspoken, charismatic First Lady who broke taboos and championed causes like addiction recovery. But few remember that before all the political spotlight, she was an accomplished dancer, studying under none other than Martha Graham, the queen of modern dance. This wasn't just a hobby. It was serious training in an art form that demands grace, discipline, and expression. Imagine Betty gliding across a stage, practicing complex choreography long before she was gliding through White House halls. Her dance background added a layer of poise and confidence that later translated into her fearless public persona. Dancing with Martha Graham isn't exactly a casual pastime. It's the kind of intense artistry that shapes your entire approach to life. It's a surprising twist that makes Betty Ford stand out even more among first ladies. And while we're on the subject of heroic rescues, Dolly Madison did something unforgettable when the British burned down the White House. Dolly Madison not only saved George Washington's portrait from the burning White House, but also her pet parrot. Dolly Madison's courage during the War of 1812 is the stuff of legend. As British troops set fire to the White House, Dolly sprang into action to save priceless artifacts, most famously the iconic portrait of George Washington. But here's the kicker. She didn't stop there. Alongside the grand symbol of American history, she also made sure her beloved pet parrot was safe and sound. While most people might be panicking about the building itself, Dolly's priorities showed a mix of practical heroism and personal devotion. Saving the father of the nation and a feathered friend in one dramatic sweep, that's multitasking on a historic level. It's a reminder that first ladies have often been the unsung heroes, juggling the fate of the country and the quirks of their private lives. And if you think Dolly's pet saved from a fire is wild, wait until you hear about Florence Harding's superstition about the number 13. Florence Harding reportedly had a superstition about the number 13. Florence Harding was no stranger to the irrational quirks that often accompany superstition, especially in an era when luck and omens still held significant sway over public and private life. Among her particular anxieties was the number 13, a figure historically synonymous with bad luck and ominous portents. It's said that Florence took extraordinary measures to avoid this dreaded digit in everyday life. Whether it was steering clear of the 13th floor in hotels, or avoiding scheduling important events on the 13th day of the month, her superstition shaped many of her decisions. This blend of presidential life and personal superstition makes her story all the more human. After all, if even a first lady can be rattled by a number, maybe we all have our odd little fears. And speaking of breaking norms, Helen Taft was the first lady to own a car, and she even drove it herself, adding a dash of modernity and rebellion to her role. Helen Taft was the first lady to own a car and drove it herself. Long before Teslas and presidential motorcades, Helen Taft was pioneering behind the wheel. Owning a car at a time when automobiles were still novelties, she wasn't content to be a mere passenger. Instead, Helen took the wheel herself, defying conventions of the early 1900s, when driving was almost exclusively a male domain. This act was more than just practical. It was a subtle but powerful statement of independence and modernity. Picture the First Lady, impeccably dressed, confidently steering through Washington streets, perhaps raising a few eyebrows among onlookers unaccustomed to such a sight. Helen's enthusiasm for technology and personal freedom marked a shift in how First Ladies could embrace progress. She showed that they could be not only figures of grace and support, but also agents of change and modern lifestyle. And if you think that's impressive, Jacqueline Kennedy's talent for drawing, especially animals, reveals an unexpected artistic side. Jacqueline Kennedy had a talent for drawing and often sketched animals. Jacqueline Kennedy might be remembered for her iconic fashion and grace, but beneath that polished exterior was a quietly talented artist. She had a special fondness for drawing, particularly animals, which offered a glimpse into her more private, reflective world. Sketching was not just a pastime, but a way for her to express emotions and find calm amidst the whirlwind of public life. From delicate pencil portraits to quick sketches, Jacqueline's art revealed an unexpected softness, a creative outlet that contrasted with her highly public role as First Lady. Whether it was capturing the poised dignity of a horse or the playful innocence of a dog, her drawings carried a personal charm and an intimate connection to the natural world. This artistic streak humanized one of the most photographed women of her time, reminding us that behind every public figure is a private individual with passions and talents. And speaking of talents, Lou Henry Hoover wasn't just fluent in Mandarin Chinese. She often practiced it with her husband, blending diplomacy with linguistic flair. Lou Henry Hoover was fluent in Mandarin Chinese and often spoke it with her husband. Lou Henry Hoover was far from your average first lady. Not only was she intellectually sharp, but she also mastered Mandarin Chinese, a rare skill, especially for someone in early 20th century America. Fluent enough to hold conversations, she and her husband, President Herbert Hoover, would often speak Mandarin to each other. This linguistic finesse was more than a party trick. It reflected their shared appreciation for culture and global awareness. Imagine the couple quietly chatting in Chinese while those around them struggled to keep up with political drama or etiquette. It was a private language of sophistication, an insider's club amid the bustling White House. Beyond just language, Lou Henry was a pioneer in many ways, balancing intellect, activism, and domestic duties. And if you think being fluent in Mandarin is impressive, wait until you meet Millie, the English Springer Spaniel who penned a best-selling book courtesy of Barbara Bush. Barbara Bush owned a pet English Springer Spaniel named Millie, who wrote a best-selling book. Barbara Bush's beloved English Springer Spaniel Millie wasn't just a furry companion. She was a bona fide literary star. Yes, Millie authored a best-selling book titled Millie's Book, as dictated to Barbara Bush. The book offered a humorous canine perspective tour of life in the White House, capturing the everyday adventures and dignified silliness of the presidential pet's existence. It was a clever way to bring a touch of lightheartedness to politics, reminding everyone that even the highest office in the land had room for a bit of fun. Millie's celebrity status humanized the Bush family, turning the first dog into a cultural icon in her own right. Imagine the Secret Service agents not only protecting the president, but also managing the antics of a canine celebrity author. And speaking of presidential pets, Martha Washington's pet parrot was quite the feisty guest. Martha Washington reportedly kept a pet parrot that would squawk at guests. Long before the modern presidential menagerie, Martha Washington had her own distinctive pet, a parrot with a penchant for squawking, especially at visitors. This feisty feathered friend wasn't just decoration. It had a personality and, apparently, a knack for making a ruckus when guests arrived. Imagine a formal reception in the 18th century. Dignitaries all dressed in their finest, only to be greeted by a loud, raucous squawk from a sassy parrot. It must have been a memorable welcome, to say the least. Martha's parrot added a touch of liveliness to the White House, reminding us that even in the halls of power, unexpected characters can steal the show. And while Martha's parrot entertained guests with its vocal talents, Rosalind Carter was mastering the art of speed reading, devouring books faster than anyone could keep up. Rosalind Carter was a speed reader and could reportedly read an entire book in an hour. Rosalind Carter's knack for speed reading wasn't just a parlor trick. It was a serious skill that helped her keep pace with the dizzying demands of life as First Lady. Imagine breezing through entire books in the time it takes most people to sip a cup of coffee. This talent wasn't just for show. It allowed her to stay informed on a vast array of topics, from mental health, one of her key advocacies, to current events and policy papers. In an era before e-books and audiobooks, this was a remarkable feat. While many struggled to find time for reading amidst their busy schedules, Rosalind made it a priority and mastered it to a level that bordered on superhuman. Her speed reading ability was more than intellectual. It was a weapon against information overload. And if you think that's a handy skill, Julia Grant's lifelong fear of lightning and thunder is a surprising, humanizing quirk for a First Lady. Julia Grant had a lifelong fear of lightning and thunder. Despite the grandeur and historical significance surrounding Julia Grant's life, she harbored a very human and relatable fear. Lightning and thunder. This lifelong phobia must have been particularly challenging, given the often unpredictable and outdoor-heavy lifestyle of the late 19th century. Imagine the First Lady cowering at the rumble of a storm, an unexpected reminder that even those in the highest echelons of society carry private fears and vulnerabilities. Julia's fear contrasts sharply with the strong, stoic image expected of presidential spouses, offering a glimpse behind the polished facade. It's a reminder that even women who shaped history had their moments of terror and tenderness. If storms made Julia uneasy, Pat Nixon was braving the skies in a much more literal way. Pat Nixon learned to fly a small plane in her youth. Long before she was greeting world leaders on the White House lawn, Pat Nixon was up in the clouds, literally. She learned to fly a small plane during her younger years, an adventurous feat for any woman of her time, let alone someone destined for the role of First Lady. Flying wasn't a casual hobby. It was daring, technical, and required nerves of steel. Pat's experience behind the controls speaks volumes about her independent spirit and willingness to embrace challenges head-on. This aviator background must have added an edge to her personality, helping her navigate the complex social and political skies of the White House years later. And speaking of navigating tricky situations, Michelle Obama's secret love of French fries reveals the First Lady's relatable, down-to-earth side. Michelle Obama had a secret love for French fries and would sneak them when she could. Even the most polished First Ladies have their guilty pleasures, and Michelle Obama's secret indulgence was French fries. Yes, the iconic champion of healthy eating and balanced living wasn't above sneaking a crispy, salty fry when no one was looking. This little quirk humanizes her in a way that no carefully crafted public image ever could. Between championing nutritious school lunches and promoting exercise, she found ways to enjoy the simple comfort food many Americans adore. It's a reminder that even the most disciplined people need a little indulgence now and then, and that sometimes a stealthy snack can be the sweetest rebellion. This contrast between public persona and private habit makes Michelle's story all the more relatable. And while Michelle was sneaking fries, Laura Bush was quietly cultivating a lifelong love of books. Laura Bush was a former librarian and loved to collect antique books. Before stepping into the spotlight as First Lady, Laura Bush was immersed in the world of literature and learning as a librarian. Her passion for books wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Collecting antique books became one of her cherished hobbies, blending her love of history, culture, and the written word. This background shaped many of her initiatives focused on education and literacy during her White House years. Picture Laura surrounded by stacks of rare volumes, savoring the smell of aged paper and ink, a quiet haven amid the bustle of politics. Her commitment to fostering a reading culture left a lasting impact, showing how even small passions can influence public service. And if Laura loved books, Nancy Reagan had a very different kind of fear, claustrophobia, that influenced her life in surprising ways. Nancy Reagan reportedly had a fear of small spaces, or claustrophobia. Despite the glitz and glamour of life as First Lady, Nancy Reagan harbored a genuine fear of small, enclosed spaces. Claustrophobia is no joke, especially when you're constantly moving through tight corridors, crowded events, and sometimes confining modes of transportation. This fear would have been a constant challenge for someone in her role, requiring courage and composure behind the scenes. It's a reminder that public figures often wrestle with private struggles that the spotlight never reveals. Nancy's ability to maintain her poise and confidence, even while grappling with claustrophobia, adds depth to her story beyond the red carpets and elegant gowns. And if Nancy faced her fears in tight spaces, Lucy Hayes was busy breaking new ground by being the first First Lady to graduate from college. Lucy Hayes was the first First Lady to graduate from college. Though she preferred to be known for her love of hymns, Lucy Hayes holds the distinguished honor of being the first First Lady with a college degree, a notable achievement in the 19th century when higher education for women was still a rarity. Despite this impressive credential, Lucy didn't flaunt her academic accomplishments. Instead, she preferred to be recognized for her heartfelt love of hymns and spiritual music. Her devotion to hymn singing was more than a hobby. It was a source of comfort and community that shaped her personal identity and public image. Imagine the White House filled with the soulful sound of hymns, led by a First Lady whose education quietly underpinned her grace and poise. Lucy's humility in favoring spiritual devotion over academic prestige highlights a different kind of strength, one rooted in faith and simplicity. And while Lucy found solace in music, Eliza Johnson had an unusual companion who accompanied her everywhere. Eliza Johnson owned a pet chipmunk named Jerry that she carried in her pocket. Eliza Johnson might have been a first lady known for her quiet and reserved nature, but she certainly had a surprising side, a pocket-sized pet chipmunk named Jerry. Carrying a chipmunk around was far from typical first lady behavior, and it added a touch of whimsy to her otherwise solemn image. One can only picture the sight of a small furry creature peeking out of a pocket during formal gatherings or long carriage rides. Jerry wasn't just a pet. He was a companion, a source of comfort in what could be an isolating and demanding role. This tiny chipmunk reminds us that even the most dignified figures have quirky attachments that bring them joy and companionship. And if Eliza was doting on Jerry, Caroline Harrison was busy impressing guests with her china painting skills. Carolyn Harrison was a talented china painter and gave lessons in the White House. Caroline Harrison brought a refined artistic touch to the White House through her talent for china painting. Not content to simply admire fine china, she took up the brush herself, creating delicate and intricate designs on porcelain. Her passion didn't stop at personal enjoyment. Caroline shared her skills by giving lessons within the White House, turning it into a space not only of politics, but also of creativity and culture. This blending of art and diplomacy added a unique charm to her tenure as First Lady. Imagine dignitaries attending formal receptions and also glimpsing a softer, more personal side of the First Lady through her art. Caroline's china painting wasn't just a hobby. It was a statement about the importance of beauty and personal expression, even amidst the serious business of statecraft. And speaking of dedicated hobbies, Ida Saxton McKinley had a pet canary she was rarely without. Ida Saxton McKinley had a pet canary that she would often take with her on trips. Ida Saxton McKinley's attachment to her pet canary was more than just a fondness for animals. It was a vital source of comfort and companionship during challenging times. Often traveling with her bird in tow, Ida's canary was a constant presence, a melodic reminder of home and normalcy. In an era when first ladies faced immense social pressures and personal hardships, Ida struggled with severe health issues. The cheerful chirping of a tiny bird offered a soothing balm. Imagine the First Lady's private quarters filled with the sweet songs of her feathered friend. A stark contrast to the political storm swirling outside. Traveling with a pet bird may seem quaint or even eccentric today, but for Ida, it was a practical way to maintain a sense of calm and connection. This little detail gives us a glimpse into the humanity behind the grand historical figure. And if Ida found solace in her canary, Edith Roosevelt was weaving her own legacy with the needle and thread. Edith Roosevelt was an expert at needlepoint and created many of the White House tapestries. Edith Roosevelt's mastery of needlepoint wasn't just a pastime. It was a profound contribution to the White House's aesthetic heritage. Known for her skillful handiwork, Edith personally crafted many of the tapestries and embroidered decorations that adorned the presidential residence during her time. This meticulous craft reflected her dedication to beauty, tradition, and the personal touch that she brought to the role of First Lady. Needlepoint requires patience, precision, and artistic vision, qualities Edith evidently possessed in abundance. Her work turned the White House into more than just a political hub. It became a showcase of craftsmanship and elegance. Guests and family alike could appreciate the warmth and care stitched into every piece. Edith's needlework symbolizes how First Ladies have historically used arts and crafts to leave their unique imprint on American history. And if Edith wove tapestries, Ellen Wilson painted murals, adding another artistic layer to the White House walls. Ellen Wilson, an accomplished artist, once painted a mural on a White House wall. Ellen Wilson wasn't content with the traditional role of First Lady. She expressed her creativity in bold and public ways. As an accomplished artist, she took on the extraordinary project of painting a mural directly on a White House wall. This act transformed a plain space into a vibrant expression of art, culture, and personal vision. Murals are inherently public and permanent, and Ellen's choice to create one within the nation's most famous residence was a daring artistic statement. It's a testament to her confidence and passion for art that she stepped beyond typical decorative arts like embroidery to produce a large-scale work for all to see. Her mural wasn't just decoration, it was a legacy, a lasting imprint of her identity and values on the very fabric of American history. And while Ellen painted on walls, Sarah Polk was setting strict rules that banned dancing and card playing at the White House. Sarah Polk was so strict about White House decorum that she banned dancing and card playing. Sarah Polk's tenure as First Lady was marked by a stringent dedication to propriety and decorum that left little room for frivolity. Her strict rules famously included banning dancing and card playing within the White House, activities often considered standard entertainment in social gatherings of the era. This austerity was reflective of her deep religious convictions and a belief that the White House should be a place of solemn respect rather than revelry. Imagine attending a formal reception where the usual lively dances were replaced by serious conversations and muted footsteps. Sarah's rigid approach set a tone that many found both admirable and stifling. Her influence extended beyond social etiquette. It was a statement about the sanctity of the presidency and the role of its spouse. While some guests might have longed for a dance or a game, Sarah held firm, prioritizing dignity over diversion. And if Sarah was all about rules, Anna Harrison's unusual bond with a goat who pulled her around in a cart brought a whole different level of whimsy to presidential history. Anna Harrison, though she never lived in the White House, owned a goat that reportedly pulled her around in a small cart. Anna Harrison, the wife of President William Henry Harrison, never got the chance to live in the White House due to her husband's untimely death. But she left behind a charmingly eccentric legacy involving a pet goat. This goat wasn't just a passive companion. It reportedly pulled her around in a small cart, making for quite the unusual mode of transport. Picture a future First Lady being chauffeured by a goat, a decidedly pastoral twist on presidential prestige. This anecdote offers a rare glimpse into the more lighthearted and quirky side of political families, reminding us that behind the grand historical narratives are personal stories filled with whimsy and charm. While Anna's goat was busy pulling her around, Hillary Clinton was developing a fascination with ancient Egypt that influenced her outlook and interests. Hillary Clinton reportedly had a fascination with ancient Egypt. Hillary Clinton's fascination with ancient Egypt reveals a thoughtful and curious side, often overshadowed by politics and policy. Ancient Egypt, with its rich tapestry of history, mystery, and monumental achievements, captivated her imagination. This interest wasn't just academic. It informed her appreciation for culture, power dynamics, and the long arc of civilization. Imagine her delving into the secrets of the pyramids, the symbolism of hieroglyphs, or the complex reigns of pharaohs as a way to draw parallels or lessons for modern governance and diplomacy. Hillary's curiosity about one of history's most enigmatic civilizations adds depth to her persona, showing how historical knowledge can enrich a leader's perspective. And if Hillary looked back to ancient times, Lady Bird Johnson was turning heads with her collection of unusual hats.
Lady Bird Johnson had a collection of unusual hats and enjoyed wearing them.
Lady Bird Johnson was not just a First Lady with a flair for environmentalism. She was also a fashion icon in her own right, known particularly for her impressive and sometimes unusual collection of hats. From wide-brim floral designs to sleek structured pieces, her hats became a signature part of her public image. Wearing a hat was more than just a style choice. It was an extension of her personality and a way to express individuality within the often rigid expectations placed on First Ladies. Lady Bird's love for hats added color and charm to many official events, breaking the monotony with a playful twist. Her collections were admired and often talked about in society pages, proving that even in the highest office, a touch of whimsy can go a long way. This fashionable hobby reflected her vibrant spirit and made her stand out in the White House's history. And while Lady Bird's hats dazzled, Bess Truman was busy perfecting the art of privacy, once famously hiding from photographers in a closet. Bess Truman was notoriously private and once hid from photographers in a closet. Bess Truman's preference for privacy was legendary, especially in an era when the media frenzy around public figures was escalating. Famously, she once hid in a closet to avoid photographers eager to capture her image, illustrating just how much she valued personal space and discretion. Unlike the more flamboyant first ladies, Bess shied away from the limelight and preferred to stay behind the scenes, supporting her husband while maintaining a low public profile. This incident with the closet perfectly encapsulates her quiet resistance to the invasive gaze of the media and the intense scrutiny that comes with political life. It's a relatable moment. Who hasn't wanted to duck out of sight when cameras get a little too close? Bess's story reminds us that even in the most public roles, maintaining boundaries is crucial. And if Bess sought shelter in closets, Lucretia Garfield was more at home in nature, passionately collecting ferns. Lucretia Garfield was an avid amateur botanist and had a large collection of ferns. Lucretia Garfield's love for botany was more than a hobby. It was a profound connection to the natural world that provided solace and intellectual stimulation. As an avid amateur botanist, she collected and studied ferns, amassing a large and impressive collection. This passion reflected the Victorian era's fascination with nature and scientific inquiry, and Lucretia's dedication showcased her keen mind and gentle spirit. Amid the pressures of political life and personal tragedy, tending to her botanical pursuits was a way to find peace and purpose. Imagine the First Lady quietly nurturing her fern collection, surrounded by the lush greenery she so adored, a stark contrast to the often harsh realities of Washington politics. Lucretia's green thumb reminds us that even figures tied to immense historical events have personal passions that define them just as much as their public roles. And while Lucretia found peace in plants, Martha Washington was busy enjoying some friendly competition through card games. Martha Washington enjoyed playing cards and was known to be quite competitive. Martha Washington, often remembered as the matriarch of the new nation, wasn't just a dignified hostess or symbol of the Revolutionary era. She also had a competitive streak, especially when it came to playing cards. Far from the prim and proper image many hold, Martha enjoyed the lively social pastime and took it seriously enough to earn a reputation as a formidable player. In a time when card games were a major form of entertainment and social bonding, her enthusiasm added warmth and spirit to gatherings. Imagine the grand rooms of Mount Vernon or early Washington receptions filled with laughter, the shuffle of cards, and Martha's determined gaze as she played to win. This competitive fun showed a more personal and relatable side of the First Lady, proving that behind every historic figure is a human who enjoys the thrill of a good game. And while Martha found joy in cards, Abigail Adams was busy dealing with a completely different kind of ghostly presence. Abigail Adams believed in ghosts and claimed to have seen one in the White House. Abigail Adams, one of America's most iconic founding mothers, was a woman of strong intellect and progressive ideas. But she was also deeply superstitious and convinced she encountered ghosts. According to her letters, she claimed to have seen a ghostly apparition in the White House, adding a chilling layer to her already fascinating life. This belief in spirits might seem out of place for someone so grounded in the political and social upheavals of her time, yet it humanizes her and shows how folklore and fear intertwined with early American history. Whether it was the stress of the Revolutionary years or genuine supernatural encounters, Abigail's ghost stories remind us that the White House has always been a place of mystery and intrigue, filled with secrets beyond just political drama. If Abigail was spooked by ghosts, Dolly Madison had her own unforgettable feathered companion keeping her company. Dolly Madison had a pet parrot that would often sit on her shoulder during social gatherings. Dolly Madison's pet parrot was more than a quirky pet. It was a charming fixture at social events and a symbol of her warm and lively personality. This colorful bird often perched on her shoulder, stealing the show during gatherings and adding a playful element to formal occasions. Dolly was known for her social graces and ability to bring people together. and her parrot's presence only enhanced her reputation as a gracious and approachable hostess. Imagine dignitaries and guests mingling while a bright feathered parrot squawked or mimicked conversation, lightening the mood and breaking the ice. This feathered friend was part of the family and a testament to Dolly's unique style, balancing the serious business of politics with moments of levity. And while Dolly's parrot added color to the scene, Louisa Adams was busy enchanting guests with her musical talents on the harp. Louisa Adams was a talented harpist and often entertained guests with her music. Louisa Adams brought a refined elegance to the White House, not just through her presence, but through her musical talents. A skilled harpist, she would often entertain guests with her enchanting performances, weaving melodies that lightened the atmosphere of many formal gatherings. The harp, with its ethereal sound and intricate playing style, requires dedication and finesse, qualities Louisa evidently possessed. Her musical contributions weren't mere background noise. They were a form of cultural diplomacy, showcasing sophistication and the arts as central to American society. Guests could leave the White House not only impressed by political discourse, but also serenaded by the delicate strings of the harp. Louisa's musical talent added a layer of grace and artistry to the presidential residence, demonstrating that First Ladies have long used culture to bridge divides and foster goodwill. If Louisa charmed with music, Mary Todd Lincoln was captivating with her fascination for the mysterious world of spiritualism. Mary Todd Lincoln was fascinated by spiritualism and held seances in the White House. Mary Todd Lincoln's intrigue with spiritualism and seances places her among those drawn to the paranormal in an attempt to find solace during dark times. Following the tragic loss of her sons and amidst the tumult of the Civil War, Mary turned to spiritualism, which was sweeping through America in the mid-19th century. She believed that communicating with the spirit world could provide comfort and perhaps guidance. Holding seances in the White House, she invited mediums and conducted rituals that would raise eyebrows today, but were taken seriously in her era. This spiritual side adds complexity to her character, revealing how grief and uncertainty drove her to explore the unknown. Her fascination with the supernatural contrasts sharply with Abraham Lincoln's pragmatic image, painting a fuller picture of their partnership and the personal struggles behind their public roles. If Mary was communing with spirits, Julia Grant was navigating life with a unique physical characteristic that shaped her public image. Julia Grant had a cross-eyed condition and preferred to be photographed only from one side. Julia Grant's cross-eyed condition was a distinctive and personal aspect of her appearance, influencing how she managed her public image. In an era when photography was still a developing art and public image was carefully curated, Julia chose to be photographed only from one side, the side that presented her best. This preference reveals an early awareness of media and the power of appearance, especially for someone in the national spotlight. Rather than shying away from her condition, Julia exercised control over her portrayal, a subtle yet assertive act of self-management. This approach humanizes her, showing the universal desire to present oneself favorably, a practice still relevant in today's age of social media and selfies. Julia's strategy reflects both vulnerability and savvy, traits that resonate across time. And if Julia was carefully managing her image, Lucy Hayes was aiming her telescope skyward as an enthusiastic amateur astronomer. Lucy Hayes was an enthusiastic amateur astronomer and owned her own telescope. Lucy Hayes wasn't just the first lady with a college degree. She also had a keen interest in the stars above. As an enthusiastic amateur astronomer, she owned her own telescope and spent time observing the night sky. This passion for astronomy was somewhat unusual for a woman in the 19th century, and especially for someone in her social position. But it highlights Lucy's intellectual curiosity and her desire to explore the unknown. Picture the First Lady stepping outside the White House grounds after dark, peering through her telescope at distant planets and constellations, finding a moment of peace amid the political hustle. Her hobby connected her to the vastness of the universe and reminded those around her of the wonders beyond earthly concerns. It also reflected the broader Victorian fascination with science and discovery. Lucy's starry-eyed pursuits added a celestial touch to the presidency, blending science with society. And if Lucy looked to the heavens, Lucretia Garfield was focused on the intricate beauty of embroidery. Lucretia Garfield was a skilled embroiderer and created intricate designs. Lucretia Garfield channeled her artistic talents into the delicate craft of embroidery, creating intricate designs that showcased both patience and creativity. Needlework was a common pastime for women of her era, but Lucretia's skill elevated it to an art form. Her embroidery wasn't just decorative, it was a reflection of her personality, precise, thoughtful, and deeply dedicated. Crafting detailed patterns required hours of meticulous work, offering her a peaceful retreat from the stresses of public life. The pieces she created adorned the White House and perhaps served as gifts, connecting the domestic sphere with the public stage. Lucretia's embroidery serves as a reminder of how first ladies have historically balanced artistry and duty, weaving their personal passions into their roles. It's a quiet legacy of creativity amidst the grandeur of politics. And while Lucretia was stitching, Frances Folsom Cleveland was charming her family and guests with her unique talent for whistling. Frances Folsom Cleveland had a special talent for whistling and often entertained her children with it. Frances Folsom Cleveland wasn't just America's youngest First Lady. She also possessed a delightful and uncommon talent, whistling. This skill wasn't merely a party trick. She often entertained her children and guests with her cheerful tunes, bringing a lightheartedness to the sometimes serious atmosphere of the White House. Whistling, as an art form, requires breath control and musicality, and Frances's ability to captivate with simple melodies showed her playful spirit and warmth. It's easy to imagine the sound of her whistling filling the rooms, breaking tension and sparking smiles during formal gatherings or quiet family moments. This personal touch helped humanize the presidency, reminding everyone that behind the politics were real people with real joys. Frances's whistling added a musical note to her legacy, blending youthfulness with charm. And if Frances could enchant with a whistle, Caroline Harrison was captivating audiences with her peculiar habit of collecting antique buttons. Caroline Harrison had a peculiar habit of collecting antique buttons. Caroline Harrison's penchant for collecting antique buttons may sound quaint today, but it was a distinctive and somewhat unusual hobby that set her apart as a First Lady, with a keen eye for detail and history. Button collecting requires patience and a deep appreciation for craftsmanship, and Caroline's collection likely included buttons from various eras and styles, each with its own story to tell. This hobby speaks to her fascination with the small but significant artifacts of daily life, reflecting a desire to preserve and celebrate the past in tangible form. In a time when the White House was both a home and a symbol of national heritage, Caroline's buttons were miniature treasures that connected her personal interests with broader cultural appreciation. This attention to the tiny details highlights her meticulous nature and adds a layer of depth to her legacy. While Caroline curated buttons, Ida Saxton McKinley was quietly battling a fear of butterflies, an ironic phobia for someone surrounded by elegance and beauty. Ida Saxton McKinley reportedly had a fear of butterflies. Despite the gentle and delicate nature of butterflies, Ida Saxton McKinley harbored an unexpected and rather ironic fear of these fluttering creatures. This phobia, known as lepidopterophobia, seems almost contradictory given her refined and poised public persona. Butterflies are often symbols of transformation and grace, yet for Ida, their unpredictable flight patterns and sudden movements may have triggered anxiety or discomfort. Living in the public eye, her fear was likely a private struggle, something she had to manage discreetly while fulfilling her duties as First Lady. This unusual aversion humanizes Ida, reminding us that even those in the highest social circles have personal fears and vulnerabilities. It also adds a touch of intrigue to her story. How did she cope with this fear during garden parties or outdoor events where butterflies might be present? Ida's phobia adds complexity to her character, making her more relatable and real. While Ida was avoiding butterflies, Edith Roosevelt was embracing adventure on horseback. Edith Roosevelt was an avid horseback rider and often rode around Washington, D.C. Edith Roosevelt's love for horseback riding showcased a spirited and active side of the First Lady that contrasted with the often rigid expectations of her time. Riding horses through the streets and parks of Washington, D.C. was not just a pastime, but a statement of vitality and independence. Horseback riding requires courage, skill, and a sense of adventure. All qualities Edith displayed with confidence. This hobby allowed her to escape the pressures of political life, providing physical exercise and mental relaxation. Picture Edith gracefully trotting through the Capitol's avenues, embodying both elegance and strength. Her riding was also symbolic of a broader movement toward modernity and women's expanding roles in public life. By embracing horseback riding, Edith defied the stereotype of the passive First Lady and inspired others to pursue active lifestyles. As Edith navigated the city on horseback, Helen Taft was making history in sports by throwing out the ceremonial first pitch at a baseball game. Helen Taft was the First Lady to throw out the ceremonial first pitch at a baseball game. Helen Taft wasn't just breaking political glass ceilings. She was also making history in the world of sports. As the First Lady to throw out the ceremonial first pitch at a baseball game, she set a tradition that would endure for over a century. This seemingly simple act was a bold statement at a time when women were largely expected to remain on the sidelines of public life, especially in male-dominated arenas like baseball. Helen's pitch wasn't just a gesture. It was a symbol of progress and participation, a way for the First Lady to connect with everyday Americans through the national pastime. Imagine the excitement and perhaps surprise of the crowd as she took the mound, blending grace with guts. This moment helped redefine the role of First Ladies, showing they could be both dignified and daring. And while Helen was throwing pitches, Ellen Wilson was engaging with the mystical side of nature. Helen Wilson had a strange belief in nature spirits and often communed with them in her garden. Ellen Wilson's fascination with nature spirits paints a picture of a First Lady attuned to the mystical and the natural world. In an era when spiritualism and alternative beliefs were gaining popularity, Ellen's belief in these ethereal entities reflects a desire to find deeper meaning and connection beyond the material. Spending time in her garden, communing with nature spirits, she embraced a practice that blended spirituality with a profound appreciation for the earth. This personal belief added a unique and somewhat enigmatic layer to her character, revealing that even the most public figures harbor private convictions that shape their worldview. Ellen's communion with nature spirits also highlights how the White House has long been a space where personal beliefs intersect with public duties. While Ellen sought guidance from nature's unseen forces, Florence Harding was more grounded in astrology and psychic consultations. Florence Harding was known for her interest in astrology and consulted psychics. Florence Harding's interest in astrology and her consultations with psychics reveal a First Lady who looked beyond the conventional for insight and guidance. Astrology, with its celestial charts and mysterious predictions, offered Florence a way to navigate the uncertainties of life and leadership. Consulting psychics further indicates her openness to exploring alternative paths to understanding events and decisions. This fascination might seem at odds with her role as a presidential spouse during a time of great political responsibility, but it underscores her human desire for reassurance and control amidst unpredictability. In an era before psychological counseling was widespread, seeking answers from the stars or seers was a common form of solace. Florence's belief in astrology and psychic advice adds a fascinating and somewhat whimsical aspect to her legacy, reminding us that even those at the highest levels of power seek comfort in the mystical. And speaking of mystical, Grace Coolidge wasn't just witty. She also had a soft spot for pets, including a cat named Tiger she often took on walks. Grace Coolidge had a pet cat named Tiger that she often took on walks with her. Grace Coolidge's affection for animals went beyond the usual dogs and birds. She had a pet cat named Tiger who enjoyed the great outdoors just as much as she did. But what made Tiger truly extraordinary was that Grace took him on walks, leash and all, around the White House grounds. This image of the First Lady strolling with a feline companion in tow was both charming and unconventional. Cats are notorious for their independent spirit, so having one obediently walk beside its owner is a feat in itself, one that speaks to the special bond Grace shared with Tiger. This unusual pet choice added a layer of warmth and relatability to her public persona, showing that even those in the highest office find joy in simple, quirky pleasures. Imagine the surprise of onlookers seeing a cat on a leash, calmly following Grace's lead through the historic grounds. Grace's unique companionship with Tiger is a delightful reminder of how First Ladies often bring their own flavor to the White House. And if Grace had her Tiger, Lou Henry Hoover was collecting seashells from the far corners of the world. Lou Henry Hoover was an avid collector of seashells and had a vast collection. Lou Henry Hoover's love for seashells was more than a casual hobby. It was a passionate and dedicated pursuit that led her to amass a vast collection. Seashell collecting is an art that requires patience, an eye for detail, and a love of nature's wonders. For Lou Henry, this pastime was a way to connect with the natural world, bringing a piece of the ocean's beauty into her daily life. Her extensive collection likely included specimens from various coastlines and oceans, each shell telling a story of distant shores and marine mysteries. This hobby also reflected her curiosity and intellectual interests, showing a First Lady deeply engaged with the world beyond politics and society. Seashells, with their intricate designs and natural artistry, symbolize both the fragility and resilience of nature, qualities Lou Henry admired. Her collection added a subtle but meaningful personal touch to her legacy. And if Lou Henry treasured shells, Eleanor Roosevelt treasured speed and adventure, famously known for her love of driving fast cars. Eleanor Roosevelt had a love for driving fast cars and was known for her adventurous spirit. Eleanor Roosevelt's love for driving fast cars perfectly captures her fearless and adventurous nature. At a time when women were often expected to be cautious and reserved, Eleanor embraced speed and independence behind the wheel. Driving fast wasn't just a thrill. It was a metaphor for her approach to life. Bold, determined, and unafraid to challenge conventions, this adventurous spirit extended beyond driving. She was an active, engaged First Lady who redefined the role through activism and public service. Picture Eleanor speeding down the roads, wind in her hair, embodying the modern woman who breaks free from societal constraints. Her passion for driving fast cars was a visible and symbolic assertion of freedom, control, and progress. Eleanor's dynamic energy continues to inspire, reminding us that even in the most formal roles, a sense of adventure can thrive. And if Eleanor loved speed, Bess Truman had a more grounded fear, her well-known aversion to elevators. Bess Truman reportedly had a fear of elevators. Bess Truman's fear of elevators might seem like a small quirk, but it offers a fascinating glimpse into the private anxieties of a First Lady living under intense public scrutiny. Elevators, especially in the mid-20th century, were not as ubiquitous or as reliable as they are today, and the enclosed rising chambers could easily provoke claustrophobia or vertigo. For someone constantly navigating the formal and often intimidating spaces of the White House, this fear added an unexpected challenge. Bess's aversion likely required her to seek alternative routes or summon courage in moments of necessity, all while maintaining the composed demeanor expected of her. This fear humanizes Bess, reminding us that despite her significant role, she faced personal hurdles just like anyone else. Her struggle with elevators underscores the often unseen emotional landscape behind the public face of politics. And while Bess battled her fears vertically, Mamie Eisenhower found comfort in a collection of good luck charms that traveled with her wherever she went. Mamie Eisenhower had a collection of good luck charms that she carried with her. Mamie Eisenhower's affinity for good luck charms added a touch of superstition and personal ritual to her otherwise glamorous and polished public persona. These charms, which she carried with her at all times, symbolized a belief in small talismans of protection and fortune, an attempt to exert some control in the unpredictable world of politics and public life. Whether they were coins, trinkets, or keepsakes with sentimental value. These objects offered Mamie reassurance and a sense of stability amidst the pressures of being First Lady. Carrying good luck charms is a universal practice found in many cultures, and Mamie's participation in this tradition highlights the shared human desire for hope and security. These small tokens softened the image of a woman often seen through the lens of fashion and society, revealing a private side full of hope and faith. While Mamie relied on charms, Jacqueline Kennedy relied on her equestrian skills to find balance and grace. Jacqueline Kennedy was a skilled equestrian and loved to ride horses. Jacqueline Kennedy's love for horseback riding showcased a blend of elegance, athleticism, and connection to tradition. Equestrianism, often associated with aristocracy and discipline, was more than a hobby for Jacqueline. It was a way to embody grace and strength simultaneously. Riding horses required not just physical skill, but a deep rapport with the animal, an ability to command and trust in equal measure. For Jacqueline, horseback riding offered a respite from the intense public spotlight, a chance to engage with nature and maintain a sense of normalcy. Her equestrian passion also reflected her upbringing and the refinement she carried into the White House, blending American tradition with European sophistication. Watching the First Lady astride a horse presented an image of poised control and freedom, qualities that resonated with the public and contributed to her enduring legacy. And if Jacqueline found freedom in riding, Lady Bird Johnson found joy and talent in impersonations that delighted her family and friends. Lady Bird Johnson had a talent for impersonations and often entertained her family with them. Lady Bird Johnson's talent for impersonations was a delightful and often surprising aspect of her personality, showing a playful side that lightened the heavy responsibilities of life in the White House. She had an uncanny ability to mimic voices, accents, and mannerisms, which made her a beloved entertainer among family and close friends. This skill wasn't just for fun. It was a way to bring laughter and ease into tense or formal situations, showcasing her warmth and approachability. Imagine the First Lady breaking the ice at a gathering by slipping into a humorous impression, sparking smiles and camaraderie. Her impersonations reflected a sharp wit and a keen eye for detail, traits that served her well in both social and political spheres. Lady Bird's lively spirit added depth to her public image, reminding everyone that even those in high office cherish moments of levity. And while Lady Bird charmed with her impressions, Pat Nixon was sharpening her poker face as a surprisingly skilled poker player. Pat Nixon was a surprisingly good poker player and enjoyed a friendly game. Pat Nixon's proficiency at poker might come as a surprise given her often reserved public demeanor, but it reveals a competitive and strategic side that few knew. Poker is a game of skill, bluffing, and psychological insight, and Pat's enjoyment and skill at the table suggest she possessed all these qualities. Playing friendly games of poker offered her a chance to relax and engage socially in an environment where quick thinking and composure were paramount. It also speaks to her ability to read people and situations, skills that would be valuable in her role as First Lady and political partner. This pastime humanizes Pat, showing that beyond the formal speeches and diplomatic duties, she enjoyed the camaraderie and challenge of a good card game. Pat's poker skills add an unexpected layer to her character, blending leisure with intellect. And while Pat played cards, Betty Ford was honing her ballet moves as a trained dancer. Betty Ford was a trained ballet dancer and taught classes in her youth. Before becoming known for her candidness and advocacy as First Lady, Betty Ford cultivated a disciplined artistic skill: ballet. Trained in this demanding and graceful dance form, she not only performed, but also taught ballet classes in her youth. Ballet requires incredible dedication, physical strength, and emotional expression, qualities Betty carried into her public life. This background gave her poise, elegance, and confidence, traits that enhanced her presence on the national stage. Teaching ballet also speaks to her nurturing side, sharing her passion and skills with others. Her dance training provided a foundation of discipline that complemented her later work in addiction recovery and women's rights. Betty's ballet journey adds a dimension of artistry and resilience to her story, showing how personal passions can influence public impact. And while Betty danced, Rosalind Carter was making waves with her passionate advocacy for mental health. Rosalind Carter had a deep interest in mental health and was a strong advocate for it. Rosalind Carter's passion for mental health advocacy stands as one of her most significant and enduring legacies. At a time when mental illness was often stigmatized and misunderstood, Rosalind boldly used her platform to raise awareness and promote compassionate care. Her deep interest went beyond mere lip service. She actively worked to improve mental health policies and support systems. She visited hospitals, met with patients, and encouraged public dialogue to reduce shame and ignorance surrounding mental health challenges. This dedication was groundbreaking, especially for a First Lady, and helped pave the way for more open discussions in America about mental well-being. Rosalind's advocacy brought empathy and urgency to a topic often swept under the rug, showing that leadership includes addressing the invisible struggles many face. Her efforts remind us that progress often begins with courage and commitment from unexpected voices. While Rosalind championed mental health, Nancy Reagan had her own spiritual beliefs guiding the White House schedule. Nancy Reagan believed in astrology and consulted an astrologer for White House scheduling. Nancy Reagan's belief in astrology and her consultation with astrologers for White House scheduling had a fascinating and controversial dimension to her tenure as First Lady. In an era marked by intense political pressure and uncertainty, Nancy turned to astrology for guidance in determining the timing of events and decisions. This reliance on celestial charts may have seemed unconventional or even eccentric, but it reflected her desire to exert control and reduce risk in a world where outcomes could have profound consequences. Consulting astrologers was a private practice that became public knowledge later, stirring debates about the influence of mysticism in politics. Nancy's openness to astrology shows how deeply personal beliefs can intersect with public roles, illustrating the complexity of navigating the pressures of the presidency. It also serves as a reminder that even in the highest offices, people seek reassurance from various sources. While Nancy looked to the stars, Barbara Bush grounded herself with a love for reading and literacy promotion. Barbara Bush had a passion for reading and encouraged literacy programs. Barbara Bush's love for reading was more than a personal hobby. It was a lifelong passion that she translated into meaningful advocacy for literacy. Understanding the power of education, Barbara championed programs aimed at reducing illiteracy and promoting access to books and learning, especially for children. Her commitment to literacy was practical and heartfelt. She believed that the ability to read was foundational to personal empowerment and societal progress. Through public appearances, speeches, and initiatives, Barbara worked tirelessly to bring attention to the importance of reading. She supported libraries, book donations, and educational reforms that sought to close the literacy gap. Her passion reflected a belief in nurturing minds and opening doors to opportunity, making literacy a key part of her legacy. Barbara's efforts continue to inspire, reminding us of the transformative power of words and stories. And while Barbara championed reading, Hillary Clinton would later achieve a Grammy Award for the audiobook version of her memoir.
Hillary Clinton once won a Grammy Award for the audiobook version of her memoir.
Hillary Clinton's Grammy Award might come as a surprise to those who know her primarily as a political figure, but it highlights her multifaceted talents and willingness to connect with audiences in diverse ways. The award was for the audiobook version of her memoir, a medium that brings her story to life through voice and narrative, allowing listeners to engage with her experiences in an intimate and personal manner. Winning a Grammy is no small feat. It's a recognition usually reserved for accomplished musicians and performers, making Hillary's achievement all the more remarkable. This accomplishment reflects her ability to communicate complex ideas and emotions, transcending the written page to reach people through sound and storytelling. It also underscores her dedication to sharing her journey in a format accessible to a wider audience, including those who prefer listening over reading. Hillary's Grammy-winning audiobook adds a unique and unexpected chapter to her public life, blending politics with arts and culture. While Hillary's voice earned her a Grammy, Laura Bush used her teaching background to inspire early childhood education. Laura Bush was a former teacher and had a passion for early childhood education. Before entering the White House as First Lady, Laura Bush was deeply involved in education, working as a teacher and librarian with a particular passion for early childhood education. Her professional experience gave her first-hand insight into the importance of foundational learning years, shaping her advocacy and initiatives during her tenure. Laura championed literacy programs, teacher support, and access to quality education for young children, recognizing that early experiences play a crucial role in lifelong success. Her efforts went beyond policy. They reflected a genuine belief in nurturing young minds and empowering families. As a former educator, she brought credibility and compassion to her role, bridging her past with her public responsibilities. Laura's dedication to early childhood education left a lasting impact, emphasizing the power of teaching and learning in shaping the future. And while Laura focused on nurturing young minds, Michelle Obama was cultivating a different kind of garden, right in the White House kitchen. Michelle Obama was known for her love of gardening and established the White House Kitchen Garden. Michelle Obama's establishment of the White House Kitchen Garden was a groundbreaking initiative that combined her love of gardening with a public health mission. This garden wasn't just ornamental. It was designed to grow fresh fruits and vegetables to support healthy eating and nutrition within the White House and serve as a national example. Michelle's passion for gardening reflected her commitment to combating childhood obesity and promoting wellness. The kitchen garden became a symbol of sustainability, education, and the power of homegrown food. It also connected the presidential residence with everyday American values like freshness, environmental awareness, and self-care. Michelle's hands-on involvement in planning and maintaining the garden showcased her dedication and set a precedent for future administrations. This initiative brought a tangible green heartbeat to the White House, inspiring communities across the country to reconnect with nature and healthy lifestyles. And while Michelle nurtured plants, Martha Washington found her own seasonal joy in the winter sport of ice skating. Martha Washington reportedly enjoyed ice skating in the winter. Martha Washington, often remembered as the dignified matriarch of the new American Republic, had a surprisingly lively pastime: ice skating during the winter months. This activity, both graceful and daring, offered her a way to enjoy the outdoors despite the harsh cold. Ice skating was a popular winter sport among the upper classes in the 18th century, blending exercise, socialization, and entertainment. For Martha, it provided a moment of freedom and joy, away from the heavy responsibilities of managing the household and supporting her husband's political career. Imagine her gliding across a frozen pond or river, elegantly balancing poise with the brisk exhilaration of skating, a rare glimpse into the lighter side of early American history. This pastime shows that even the earliest first ladies found ways to enjoy life's simple pleasures. And if Martha found delight on the ice, Abigail Adams found purpose in advocating for women's rights through her prolific letter writing. Abigail Adams was an early advocate for women's rights and often wrote about it. Abigail Adams' extensive correspondence reveals her as one of America's earliest and most outspoken advocates for women's rights. Long before the formal women's suffrage movement took shape, Abigail was urging her husband, John Adams, and others to remember the ladies in the founding of the new nation. Her letters brimmed with passionate arguments for gender equality, education, and legal rights, showcasing her progressive vision. Abigail's advocacy wasn't just theoretical, it was deeply personal, shaped by her own experiences and frustrations as a woman living in a patriarchal society. Her eloquence and foresight laid intellectual groundwork for future generations of activists. Through her writings, Abigail emerges as a pioneering feminist voice, using the power of the pen to challenge societal norms. Her courage and clarity continue to inspire those fighting for equality. While Abigail penned her revolutionary ideas, Dolly Madison was busy throwing some of the liveliest parties in Washington. Dolly Madison was a social butterfly and was known for throwing lively parties. Dolly Madison's reputation as a social butterfly and hostess extraordinaire is legendary. She transformed the often stiff and formal White House social scene into vibrant, welcoming gatherings filled with charm, wit, and warmth. Her lively parties were not just occasions for entertainment, they were strategic and essential for building political alliances and easing tensions. Dolly's ability to bring people together from diverse backgrounds helped foster a sense of unity and camaraderie during challenging times. She was known for her graciousness, humor, and knack for making guests feel at ease, earning her widespread affection and respect. These social skills were critical assets in her role as First Lady, demonstrating how diplomacy and hospitality can go hand in hand. Her parties became famous for their energy and inclusiveness, reflecting her natural charisma and commitment to public service. And if Dolly set the tone for White House gatherings, Louisa Adams had her own feathered companion, adding mischief to the mix, a pet parrot known for flying off with guests' hats.
Louisa Adams had a pet parrot that was reportedly quite mischievous and would often fly off with guests' hats. Louisa Adams' pet parrot wasn't just a colorful addition to the White House. It was a mischievous character in its own right. Known for its playful antics, the parrot had a peculiar habit of flying off with guests' hats, causing both amusement and mild chaos at social gatherings. Imagine a formal White House event where dignitaries and politicians find their carefully placed hats suddenly spirited away by an audacious bird. This playful disruption added a lighthearted touch to otherwise serious occasions, showcasing Louisa's ability to balance decorum with humor. The parrot's antics likely broke the ice and brought smiles, reminding everyone that beneath the weighty affairs of state, there was room for whimsy. Louisa's feathered companion became a memorable part of her tenure as First Lady, symbolizing both the charm and unpredictability of life in the White House. Sarah Polk reportedly never smiled in photographs, earning her the nickname the Sphinx. Sarah Polk's photographic legacy is defined less by smiles and more by her serious, almost inscrutable expression. So much so that she earned the nickname the Sphinx. In an era when photography was a formal and rare occasion, the tendency to avoid smiling was common, partly due to long exposure times. But Sarah's consistent stoicism went beyond technical limitations. It reflected her personality and the solemn dignity she carried as First Lady. Her serious countenance projected strength, control, and a strict adherence to the decorum she valued deeply. This stern image set her apart from more effusive predecessors and successors, leaving a lasting impression on how she was remembered by history and the public. Her stoic photographs stand as symbols of an era when gravitas was paramount, and frivolity was discouraged in the public eye. And if Sarah was famously stern, Mary Todd Lincoln was quietly wrestling with a very different kind of fear. Mary Todd Lincoln had a fear of open spaces, or agoraphobia. Mary Todd Lincoln's fear of open spaces, known today as agoraphobia, was a deeply personal and challenging aspect of her life. Agoraphobia involves anxiety about being in situations where escape might be difficult, and it likely compounded the immense stress she faced during the Civil War years. This fear made public appearances and travel difficult, and added to her struggles with grief and mental health. Mary's agoraphobia humanizes her, showing how even someone married to one of America's most revered presidents contended with invisible battles. Her courage in continuing her public duties despite this fear highlights her resilience. Understanding Mary's agoraphobia provides insight into her complex personality, shaped by trauma, loss, and the pressures of her unprecedented role. Her story reminds us that personal vulnerabilities often lie beneath public strength. And while Mary struggled with wide-open spaces, Eliza Johnson kept close to her musical passions as a talented pianist and guitarist. Eliza Johnson was a talented musician and played the piano and guitar. Eliza Johnson, often overshadowed in history, possessed a remarkable musical talent that enriched her life and those around her. Skilled in both piano and guitar, she embraced music as a form of expression and solace during challenging times. In an era when women's roles were often limited, Eliza's musicianship offered a creative outlet that allowed her to connect emotionally and socially.
Her performances likely brought comfort to family and friends, transforming private moments into shared experiences of beauty and harmony. Music was more than a pastime. It was a language that transcended the political upheaval surrounding her, especially as she supported her husband, President Andrew Johnson, through turbulent years. Eliza's dedication to her musical gifts reveals a personal depth often lost in the historical record. Through her piano and guitar, she found a voice and a refuge. While Eliza's fingers danced across strings and keys, Julia Grant's pet parrot was making quite the vocal impression. Julia Grant had a pet parrot that would often mimic her husband's voice. Julia Grant's pet parrot was more than just a colorful companion. It was a vocal mimic capable of imitating her husband, President Ulysses S. Grant. This ability added a touch of humor and personality to the presidential household. Parrots are known for their intelligence and mimicry, and Julia's bird's knack for echoing her husband's voice likely amused and entertained both family and guests. This playful pet brought levity to a White House often marked by serious political affairs and post-war recovery. Imagine the surprise of visitors hearing the president's voice coming from an unexpected feathered source, blurring the lines between nature and politics in the most charming way. Julia's parrot reflects the unique domestic moments that humanize historical figures, reminding us that behind every presidency are ordinary joys and quirks. And while Julia's parrot amused guests, Lucy Hayes looked to the stars as an amateur astronomer. Lucy Hayes was an enthusiastic amateur astronomer and owned her own telescope. Lucy Hayes broke the mold of traditional first ladies through her enthusiastic passion for astronomy. Owning her own telescope, she indulged in the study of celestial bodies, gazing at planets, stars, and the mysteries of the night sky. In the 19th century, astronomy was an emerging field, and Lucy's interest reflects her intellectual curiosity and openness to science. This hobby provided her with moments of contemplation and wonder, a connection to the vast universe beyond the confines of politics and social expectations. It also showcased her willingness to embrace pursuits outside typical domestic roles, highlighting a progressive side of her character. Lucy's stargazing not only enriched her personal life, but also subtly challenged perceptions of women's interests and capabilities in her time. Her telescope symbolized both knowledge and imagination, a perfect blend for a first lady reaching for the stars. And as Lucy explored the heavens, Lucretia Garfield focused her talents on the earth through the intricate art of embroidery. Lucretia Garfield was a skilled embroiderer and created intricate designs. Lucretia Garfield's dedication to embroidery was much more than a simple hobby. It was an art form that reflected her patience, creativity, and attention to detail. In the 19th century, embroidery was a popular pastime among women, but Lucretia elevated it through her skill in creating intricate designs that required hours of focused work. This delicate craft offered her a peaceful refuge from the stresses of public life, allowing her to channel her energy into something beautiful and tangible. Her embroidery likely adorned garments, household linens, and perhaps even pieces displayed in the White House, adding a personal touch to the presidential residence. The care and precision involved in her needlework symbolized the grace and resilience she brought to her role as First Lady. Lucretia's artistry provides a window into the domestic lives of women in political spheres, showing how personal passions often intertwine with public duties. And if Lucretia was threading needles, Frances Folsom Cleveland was perfecting the art of whistling. Frances Folsom Cleveland had a special talent for whistling and often entertained her children with it. Frances Folsom Cleveland's talent for whistling brought a musical and playful energy to the White House, especially in her interactions with her children. Whistling, while simple in concept, requires control and melody, and Frances's ability to entertain with this skill added a lightheartedness to her family life. In the midst of her duties as First Lady and mother, whistling likely served as a joyful outlet and a way to connect with her children through music. This talent helped soften the formal atmosphere of the presidential residence, making it a warmer, more approachable home. Frances's whistling illustrates how small, personal abilities can contribute significantly to the fabric of family life.
even in places as historically significant as the White House. It's a charming detail that humanizes her and highlights the everyday joys found amidst the demands of public service. And while Frances was filling rooms with music, Caroline Harrison was indulging in a more peculiar hobby. Caroline Harrison had a peculiar habit of collecting antique buttons. Caroline Harrison's unusual passion for collecting antique buttons adds an intriguing layer to her personality as First Lady. Button collecting, though not a common pastime today, was an activity that required patience, a keen eye for detail, and an appreciation for craftsmanship. Her collection likely included buttons from various eras and regions, each piece a tiny artifact with its own history and design. This hobby reflected Caroline's interest in preserving and appreciating the past, as well as her ability to find fascination in the smallest details of life. Collecting buttons might seem trivial, but for Caroline, it was a meaningful pursuit that connected her to tradition and artistry. It also provided a quiet, personal refuge from the public pressures of her role. Through this habit, she demonstrated how even the most formal figures find comfort in simple, tangible treasures. And while Caroline curated buttons, Ida Saxton McKinley faced a very different challenge, a fear of butterflies. Ida Saxton McKinley reportedly had a fear of butterflies. Ida Saxton. McKinley's fear of butterflies, known as lepidopterophobia, might sound unusual given the delicate and beautiful nature of these insects, but it highlights how even the most refined individuals harbor personal fears. Butterflies, often symbols of transformation and grace, apparently triggered anxiety in Ida, adding a poignant layer of vulnerability to her character. Living as First Lady during a period marked by personal tragedies and her own health struggles, Ida's fear could have been intensified by the pressures and unpredictability of public life. This phobia likely made social events, especially outdoor ones where butterflies were present, challenging experiences for her. It reminds us that behind the polished facade of political spouses are very human beings with fears and quirks. Ida's struggle with butterflies adds depth to her legacy, showing that even in the most exalted roles, personal battles quietly persist. While Ida was wary of butterflies, Edith Roosevelt was confidently navigating the streets of Washington on horseback. Edith Roosevelt was an avid horseback rider and often rode around Washington, D.C. Edith Roosevelt's passion for horseback riding showcased her vibrant and independent spirit. Riding horses through the streets and parks of Washington, D.C. was not only a leisure activity but also a bold statement of freedom and vitality. At a time when women's roles were largely confined to the domestic sphere, Edith's equestrian pursuits demonstrated strength, skill, and a willingness to break social norms. Horseback riding requires balance, courage, and a connection with the animal, and Edith embraced these challenges with enthusiasm. Her rides through the Capitol offered moments of escape from the pressures of political life, providing physical exercise and mental rejuvenation. This active lifestyle contrasted with the more traditional expectations of a First Lady, highlighting Edith's modern approach to her role. Her love of horseback riding added a dynamic and relatable dimension to her public image, inspiring admiration for her vitality. As Edith galloped through the city, Helen Taft was making history in a different arena, becoming the First Lady to throw out the ceremonial first pitch at a baseball game. Helen Taft was the First Lady to throw out the ceremonial first pitch at a baseball game. Helen Taft's pioneering act of throwing out the ceremonial first pitch marked the beginning of a beloved White House tradition that continues today. In the early 1900s, baseball was solidifying its status as America's pastime, yet women were rarely seen participating in such public sporting ceremonies. Helen's decision to step up and throw the first pitch was a subtle but powerful gesture that challenged gender norms and embraced the growing cultural importance of sports. Her involvement connected the presidency to everyday American life, showing that the First Lady could engage with the public in unexpected and relatable ways. The image of Helen tossing the baseball captured a moment of progress and lightheartedness, demonstrating her willingness to embrace new roles and break barriers.
This act symbolized a broader shift in the public perception of women in leadership and set a precedent for future First Ladies to participate actively in national traditions. While Helen was making history on the baseball diamond, Ellen Wilson was exploring a more mystical side of nature through her belief in nature spirits. Ellen Wilson had a strange belief in nature spirits and often communed with them in her garden. Ellen Wilson's belief in nature spirits adds a fascinating and somewhat mystical layer to her tenure as First Lady. In a time when spiritualism and alternative beliefs were gaining traction, Ellen's conviction that unseen spirits inhabited her garden reflects a deep connection to nature and a search for meaning beyond the visible world. This belief led her to spend time communing with these spirits, seeking guidance, comfort, or simply a sense of harmony with the environment. The idea of a First Lady engaging with nature on such an intimate, spiritual level challenges our expectations of political figures, revealing a personal and introspective side. Her garden became not just a place of beauty, but a sanctuary for these mystical interactions. Ellen's spiritual practices, while perhaps unusual, demonstrate the human desire to find peace and understanding through connection with something greater. As Ellen communed with spirits, Florence Harding was exploring astrology and psychic consultations for guidance in her own life. Florence Harding was known for her love of flapper fashion and often wore bold outfits. Florence Harding's fashion choices reflected the vibrant and rebellious spirit of the 1920s, an era defined by the flapper movement. Known for her love of bold and fashionable outfits, she embraced the styles that symbolized modernity, freedom, and a break from Victorian restraint. Flapper fashion was characterized by shorter hemlines, loose silhouettes, and eye-catching accessories, choices that conveyed confidence and a willingness to challenge societal norms. Florence's adoption of these styles not only showcased her personal taste, but also aligned her with the cultural shifts of the Jazz Age. As First Lady, she brought a youthful energy and contemporary flair to the White House, reflecting broader changes in American society. Her fashion sense was more than aesthetics. It was a statement of progress and independence. While Florence dazzled with her wardrobe, Grace Coolidge charmed with her dry wit and love of telling jokes. Grace Coolidge loved to tell jokes and was known for her dry wit. Grace Coolidge's reputation for dry wit and a keen sense of humor brought levity and charm to her role as First Lady. Known for her ability to deliver jokes with impeccable timing and subtlety, she used humor as a tool to connect with people, ease tensions, and brighten social gatherings. In the often serious and formal atmosphere of the White House, Grace's wit was a refreshing presence, revealing a sharp intellect and a relatable personality. Her jokes were never frivolous. They were delivered with a sophistication that made them memorable and endearing. This gift for humor helped humanize the presidency and made her a beloved figure in social circles. Grace's ability to laugh and make others laugh demonstrated the power of comedy in leadership and diplomacy. And while Grace was mastering humor, Lou Henry Hoover was making history with her role in the Girl Scouts and her design of their uniform. Lou Henry Hoover was an enthusiastic Girl Scout leader and even designed their uniform. Lou Henry Hoover's dedication to the Girl Scouts movement showcased her commitment to empowering young women and fostering leadership skills during a time when female independence was still gaining ground. As an enthusiastic leader, she wasn't content to merely support from the sidelines. She actively engaged with the organization, helping to shape its direction and influence. One of her most notable contributions was designing the Girl Scout uniform, a practical yet symbolic garment that gave members a sense of identity and pride. This uniform helped unify the Scouts and represented values such as teamwork, discipline, and community service. Lou Henry's involvement reflected her broader philosophy of encouraging self-reliance and education among girls, preparing them for roles beyond traditional expectations. Her leadership within the Girl Scouts highlights how First Ladies have historically extended their influence into social causes, leaving lasting legacies beyond the political realm. While Lou Henry was designing uniforms, Eleanor Roosevelt was redefining what it meant to be a First Lady through her love of hot dogs and informal White House picnics. Eleanor Roosevelt was a big fan of hot dogs and would often serve them at White House picnics. Eleanor Roosevelt's fondness for hot dogs might seem surprising for a First Lady known for her activism and public gravitas, but it perfectly captures her approachable and down-to-earth nature. Serving hot dogs at White House picnics was a way to connect with everyday Americans, breaking down barriers between the presidency and the public. These informal gatherings offered moments of warmth and inclusivity, with hot dogs symbolizing comfort food enjoyed across the nation. Eleanor's embrace of such a simple pleasure demonstrated her understanding of the power of shared experiences to foster unity and goodwill. It was a refreshing contrast to the often stiff formality of the White House, reflecting her belief that leadership should be relatable and compassionate. Her hot dog picnics became a beloved tradition, showing that even those at the highest levels of power appreciate life's simple joys. While Eleanor promoted comfort food, Bess Truman was known for her dislike of public speaking, sometimes to the point of fainting. Bess Truman disliked public speaking so much that she once fainted before a speech. Bess Truman's aversion to public speaking highlights the often unseen personal challenges faced by First Ladies. Despite her important role, Bess was notoriously uncomfortable with the spotlight and the demands of delivering speeches or addressing large audiences. This discomfort was so intense that she reportedly once fainted before giving a speech. A vivid example of the pressure and anxiety public figures endure. Bess's struggle with public speaking humanizes her, showing that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it despite difficulty. Her experience underscores the immense emotional labor involved in fulfilling the ceremonial and public expectations placed on presidential spouses. It also serves as a reminder that behind the polished appearances are individuals grappling with their own vulnerabilities. Bess's candid discomfort adds depth to her legacy, illustrating the personal sacrifices made in service of the nation. And if Bess faced stage fright, Mamie Eisenhower found comfort and companionship in a special Mamie doll that accompanied her everywhere. Mamie Eisenhower had a special Mamie doll that traveled with her everywhere. Mamie Eisenhower's attachment to her special Mamie doll reveals a personal and sentimental side to the First Lady, showing that even the most prominent figures often hold on to comforting tokens from their past. This doll wasn't just a childhood keepsake. It was a cherished companion that accompanied Mamie through her demanding public life. The doll symbolized familiarity and stability amid the constant pressures and upheavals of political life. Carrying a personal object like this, especially into the White House and beyond, illustrates how Mamie maintained a connection to her roots and identity. It's a touching reminder that behind the glamour and formality, First Ladies are people who find comfort in small, meaningful possessions. This Mamie doll likely provided her with a sense of calm and reassurance during challenging moments, serving as a silent confidant and link to her past. While Mamie carried her doll for comfort, Jacqueline Kennedy carried another kind of talent, designing and creating her own clothes. Jacqueline Kennedy had a talent for designing clothes and often created her own outfits. Jacqueline Kennedy's influence on fashion extended beyond simply wearing the latest styles. She was actively involved in designing and creating many of her own outfits. This talent showcased her artistic eye, attention to detail, and desire for personal expression. At a time when First Ladies were expected to embody elegance and grace, Jacqueline took it a step further by shaping her public image through hands-on creativity. Designing her own clothes allowed her to cultivate a signature style that was both timeless and trend-setting, influencing fashion not only in America, but around the world. Her involvement in fashion was a powerful form of communication, projecting sophistication, modernity, and cultural refinement. By creating her own ensembles, Jacqueline exercised agency over her image and crafted a visual legacy that continues to inspire designers and fashion enthusiasts today. While Jacqueline tailored her wardrobe, Lady Bird Johnson was showcasing a different kind of flair with her passion for wildflowers and highway beautification. Lady Bird Johnson had a passion for wildflowers and spearheaded efforts to beautify highways. Lady Bird Johnson's love for wildflowers was more than just an aesthetic preference. It became the foundation of a nationwide movement to beautify America's highways. Recognizing the impact of natural beauty on public morale and environmental health, she championed the planting and preservation of native wildflowers along roadsides. Her efforts led to the Highway Beautification Act, sometimes called Lady Bird's Bill, which sought to reduce billboards and encourage landscaping projects across the country. This initiative transformed mundane stretches of highway into vibrant corridors of color and life, improving the travel experience and fostering environmental stewardship. Lady Bird's passion demonstrated how a personal interest could spark significant legislative and cultural change, blending conservation with community pride. Her commitment not only enhanced America's landscapes, but also raised awareness of ecological preservation, making her legacy one of beauty and advocacy. While Lady Bird cultivated wildflowers, Pat Nixon was tending to a different kind of garden. Her skilled gardening of the White House grounds. Pat Nixon was a skilled gardener and spent much of her time tending to the White House grounds. Pat Nixon's dedication to gardening was more than a leisurely pastime. It was a profound way she connected with nature and contributed to the beauty of the nation's most famous residents. She took personal interest in planting and maintaining the gardens surrounding the White House, spending countless hours nurturing flowers, shrubs, and trees. Gardening provided her with a sense of peace and accomplishment amidst the demanding responsibilities of public life. Her hands-on approach showcased not only her love for horticulture, but also her desire to leave a lasting, tangible mark on the White House. Visitors and staff alike benefited from the serene and vibrant landscapes she helped cultivate. Pat's gardening reflected a broader understanding of stewardship and care, extending the First Lady's influence beyond social events to the environment itself. This commitment to cultivating living beauty became a cherished part of her legacy. And while Pat was cultivating gardens, Betty Ford was cultivating a dance floor with her love of disco music. Betty Ford was known for her love of disco music and would often dance in the White House. Betty Ford's enthusiasm for disco music and dancing brought a lively and modern energy to the White House, distinguishing her as a First Lady unafraid to embrace contemporary culture. During the 1970s, disco was at its peak popularity, symbolizing freedom, expression, and social connection. Betty's love for this upbeat genre translated into spontaneous dance sessions, often held right within the White House walls. Her willingness to dance publicly broke the mold of the traditional reserved First Lady, making her relatable and approachable to the American people. Dancing to disco wasn't just entertainment for Betty. It was a way to celebrate life and encourage joy amidst the serious political climate. This playful side contributed to her legacy as a candid, vibrant woman who used her platform to connect with people authentically. Betty's disco dances helped soften the image of the presidency and brought a touch of fun to the nation's most formal residents. While Betty was dancing, Rosalind Carter was nurturing a quieter passion for birdwatching. Rosalind Carter was an avid birdwatcher and kept a bird feeder outside her White House window. Rosalind Carter's love for birdwatching provided her with a peaceful and contemplative hobby that contrasted with the often hectic pace of political life. Keeping a bird feeder outside her White House window, she created a small sanctuary to observe and enjoy the diversity of bird species visiting the grounds. This pastime not only offered relaxation and connection to nature, but also demonstrated her appreciation for environmental preservation. Birdwatching requires patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to engage with the natural world, qualities Rosalind embodied. Her hobby allowed her moments of quiet reflection amidst the demands of public service and advocacy, particularly her work on mental health and social issues. By inviting birds to her window, she symbolically bridged the gap between the formal institution of the presidency and the simplicity of everyday natural beauty. Rosalind's birdwatching reminds us that even in the highest offices, finding joy in the small wonders of life remains essential. And while Rosalind observed birds, Nancy Reagan was indulging her lifelong passion for Hollywood movies with private screenings at the White House. Nancy Reagan was a lifelong fan of Hollywood movies and often had private screenings at the White House. Nancy Reagan's passion for Hollywood movies was a defining aspect of her life long before she became First Lady, and she carried this love into her time at the White House. As a former actress herself, Nancy had a deep appreciation for the art of filmmaking and storytelling, which provided her with comfort and escape from the pressures of political life. Hosting private movie screenings at the White House allowed her to bring a touch of Hollywood glamour to the nation's most famous residents. These intimate gatherings offered moments of relaxation and enjoyment for the presidential family and their guests, blending entertainment with hospitality. Nancy's devotion to cinema also underscored her connection to American culture and the entertainment industry, highlighting her unique background. Her enthusiasm for movies helped humanize her public persona, revealing a personal passion that resonated with many Americans. While Nancy enjoyed the silver screen, Barbara Bush embraced humor and honesty as hallmarks of her personality. Barbara Bush had a reputation for her blunt honesty and sense of humor. Barbara Bush was known not only for her role as First Lady, but also for her candidness and quick wit, which endeared her to many Americans. Her reputation for blunt honesty was a refreshing departure from the often polished and guarded communication style expected in political circles. Barbara's humor was sharp, self-deprecating, and disarming, allowing her to connect with people on a genuine level. Whether in interviews or casual conversations, her straightforwardness broke down barriers and made her relatable and approachable. This mix of honesty and humor helped soften the sometimes intimidating image of the White House and showcased her warmth and strength. Barbara's ability to laugh at herself and speak plainly was a key element of her public charm and lasting popularity. As Barbara wielded her wit, Hillary Clinton was making early public appearances, including on a game show called College Bowl. Hillary Clinton once appeared on a game show called College Bowl in her youth. Before Hillary Clinton became a prominent political figure and First Lady, she made one of her earliest public appearances on the game show College Bowl. This television show, popular in the mid-20th century, featured college students competing in academic trivia and knowledge-based challenges. Hillary's participation demonstrated her intellect, quick thinking, and confidence, traits that would later define her career. Appearing on College Bowl also provided a platform for her to showcase her poise and composure under pressure, skills that served her well in public life. This youthful experience connects her to the broader narrative of American education and competition, highlighting how early opportunities can shape future leaders. Hillary's College Bowl appearance is a charming and somewhat unexpected chapter in her life, reminding us that behind every political figure is a story of growth and ambition. And while Hillary was competing on television, Laura Bush was cultivating her love of mystery novels. Laura Bush enjoyed reading mystery novels and often recommended them to friends. Laura Bush's love for mystery novels was more than a casual pastime. It was a passion that allowed her to unwind and engage her intellect simultaneously. Diving into stories filled with suspense, puzzles, and intrigue, she found joy in unraveling complex plots and exploring the depths of human nature through literature. This hobby not only provided her with relaxation, but also sparked conversations with friends and acquaintances, as she frequently recommended her favorite mystery books. Laura's enthusiasm for reading reflects her lifelong dedication to literacy and education, emphasizing the importance of storytelling in personal and cultural development. By sharing her love of mysteries, she encouraged others to discover the thrill of reading, making literature a bridge for connection and learning. Her engagement with mystery novels humanizes the First Lady, revealing a relatable side amid her public duties. While Laura immersed herself in fiction, Michelle Obama was cultivating a living legacy through her gardening and health initiatives. Michelle Obama was known for her love of gardening and established the White House Kitchen Garden. Michelle Obama's establishment of the White House Kitchen Garden was a landmark initiative blending her personal passion for gardening with her commitment to public health. The garden was designed to grow fresh fruits and vegetables, providing healthy food options within the White House, and serving as a powerful symbol of nutrition and sustainability. Michelle's love for gardening was more than aesthetic. It was a public statement promoting awareness about diet, obesity prevention, and environmental stewardship. The kitchen garden became a hub for education and outreach, inspiring schools and communities to embrace gardening and healthy eating. Michelle's hands-on involvement highlighted her dedication to creating positive change through accessible, tangible actions. The garden's success underscored the power of personal passion combined with policy influence, demonstrating how the First Lady's role can extend beyond ceremony to active advocacy. While Michelle nurtured plants and healthy habits, Martha Washington found joy in the brisk activity of ice skating during winter months. Martha Washington reportedly enjoyed ice skating in the winter. Martha Washington, often revered as the nation's First Lady, had a surprisingly lively and playful side, as evidenced by her enjoyment of ice skating during the winter months. Ice skating in the 18th century was a popular pastime among the upper classes, blending exercise, elegance, and social interaction. For Martha, this activity provided both physical enjoyment and a chance to engage with family and friends in a less formal setting. Imagine the First Lady gliding gracefully across a frozen pond, dressed in period attire, embodying a balance between poise and joyful recreation. Ice skating was more than just fun. It was a way for Martha to connect with the changing seasons and embrace moments of lightheartedness amidst the weighty responsibilities of her time. This lesser-known fact reminds us that even the earliest figures in American history found ways to enjoy simple pleasures. And if Martha found delight on the ice, Abigail Adams was making her mark as an early advocate for women's rights through her passionate writings. Abigail Adams was an early advocate for women's rights and often wrote about it. Abigail Adams is widely remembered not only as the wife of John Adams, but also as a pioneering advocate for women's rights. Her correspondence, filled with thoughtful and progressive ideas, urged her husband to remember the ladies during the formation of the United States government. Abigail's advocacy went beyond the typical roles expected of women in the 18th century. She argued passionately for educational opportunities, legal rights, and broader recognition of women's contributions to society. Her letters reveal a woman ahead of her time, deeply committed to justice and equality. These writings provided early intellectual foundations for the women's rights movements that would gain momentum in later centuries. Abigail's courage in expressing these views, often in private letters, highlights her profound influence on American history. She used her voice to challenge norms and inspire change, laying the groundwork for future generations. While Abigail fought for women's rights through her words, Dolly Madison was known for her lively social presence and unforgettable parties. Dolly Madison was a social butterfly and was known for throwing lively parties. Dolly Madison's reputation as a social butterfly and consummate hostess is legendary. She transformed the White House's social scene by throwing lively, inclusive parties that became essential for political and social networking. Known for her warmth, charm, and impeccable etiquette, Dolly's gatherings were more than mere entertainment. They were strategic events that helped shape political alliances and foster goodwill. Her ability to make guests feel welcome and at ease earned her widespread admiration and helped soften the often tense atmosphere of Washington politics. Dolly's parties were filled with music, dancing, and conversation, reflecting her belief in the power of social connection to build community and influence. She was adept at balancing the demands of her role with her natural charisma, making her one of the most beloved first ladies in American history. Her social skills set a standard for future first ladies and remain a hallmark of the position. And if Dolly was the queen of social gatherings, Louisa Adams had her own feathery mischief maker, a parrot known for stealing guests' hats. Louisa Adams had a pet parrot that was reportedly quite mischievous and would often fly off with guests' hats. Louisa Adams' mischievous pet parrot added an unexpected flair of whimsy and chaos to White House gatherings. Known for its habit of flying off with guests' hats, this feathered troublemaker brought moments of lighthearted amusement to otherwise formal occasions. Imagine dignitaries and visitors, resplendent in their finest attire, suddenly finding their hats spirited away by a playful parrot soaring above. This little scamp not only entertained the guests, but also served as a charming icebreaker, helping to diffuse tension and encourage socializing. Louisa's affection for the parrot demonstrated her warmth and ability to balance the solemnity of her role with touches of levity. This anecdote highlights how personal quirks and pets have long played a role in humanizing presidential households, reminding us that behind the grandeur, there are real people with real personalities. And while Louisa's parrot was causing mischief, Julia Grant was quietly indulging her unique hobby of collecting antique thimbles. Julia Grant had a unique hobby of collecting antique thimbles. Julia Grant's unusual pastime of collecting antique thimbles reveals a meticulous and somewhat quirky facet of her personality. Thimbles, small protective caps used in sewing, were often intricately decorated and crafted from various materials, making them prized collectibles. Julia's collection likely encompassed a range of designs and origins, each piece a miniature work of art and a connection to craftsmanship across cultures and eras. This hobby required patience, attention to detail, and a deep appreciation for delicate artistry, qualities Julia exhibited both in her personal interests and public life. Collecting such tiny treasures provided her with a quiet refuge from the public eye and a way to preserve history in tangible form. It's a reminder that the lives of First Ladies, often overshadowed by their spouses, are rich with personal passions and intellectual pursuits. And while Julia collected thimbles, Mamie Eisenhower had a fondness for elephant figurines, which she adored. Mamie Eisenhower had a penchant for collecting elephant figurines. Mamie Eisenhower's affection for elephant figurines was a charming and distinctive part of her personality. Elephants, often symbols of strength, wisdom, and good luck, clearly resonated with her, inspiring a collection that decorated her living spaces. These figurines came in various sizes and styles, each carrying its own appeal and meaning. Mamie's collection was more than decorative. It reflected her personal taste and perhaps a subconscious desire to surround herself with symbols of stability and resilience amid the demands of political life. Collecting such figurines also added a playful and warm dimension to her otherwise polished public image, revealing a first lady who appreciated whimsy and tradition alike. Mamie's elephant figurines became a subtle trademark, softening the formality of the White House with their quiet presence. This quirky passion illustrates how personal interests often enrich the legacy of those in public office, making history feel more intimate and relatable.